So we're doing a quick mobile live because I've been busy with life in general, but I did want to talk about the horses that I fancy or my views on the races for day one at the Punchestown Festival. Of course, the flat season is upon us in these sides of the sea, so the British Isles. Sandown was a different season ender this year, not being able to be there, things like that. But we're not going to talk too much about that, or we're not going to talk about it at all. We're going to talk about Punchestown because that's what we're here for. As I said, I'm going to try and keep these short and concise. I'm going to do these every day just to give you a skim through what I like. Now, there are more races than just the grade ones. I'm a bit of a graded snob, you guys will know that. And they're the races that I'm really focused on for Punchestown this year. We touched on before how the field sizes may have been a bit smaller than people would have anticipated for things like Cheltenham, which I don't think they were that bad, but you know, entries were down. And then you look at Aintree, which is typically like a grade 2 festive anyway. There were smaller field sizes there. The cream of the crop weren't particularly running. But Punchestown, we do have potentially, again, smaller size fields. But I think more than anything, it echoes the fact that we may not have had as strong a division of hurdlers and chasers this season, more than anything else. And it's quite nice that we don't have too many like sort of cannon fodder just plodding about in these graded races for the sake of it. They're sort of no hopers. So I think all the key names are running in the races that they should be running in there. It's a fascinating end to the season. We know that William Munnins farms this festival typically. Henry de Bromhead's had such a great season. Rachel Blackmore will be looking to try and overtake Paul Townend to get the champion jockey. So there's just loads to pay attention to this weekend. I think the fact that Paul Townend's back from injury, it just pays to pay attention to the horses that he is going to ride. Obviously, the big names in the graded races, they make sense. But anything that he might be jocked up in a handicap, you know, taking a bit of a risk to ride them, I don't think he's going to be jumping on anything that he doesn't think can win this week. So what we'll do is we'll jump into Tuesday's action. As I say, I'm more geared towards the graded races, although I've got a bit of a mention for a couple of other races. So we'll kick off the 340, the first race, the Novice Handicap Hurdle. Isn't particularly anything in here that I like. Just wanted to make a mention for the 4-year-olds that will be running in here because I know Scholastic will be fancied by a few. Course and distance form, it's got form behind some decent horses as well. The 4-year-old allowance, we know for a Supreme, we talk about lots of horses that maybe be favourite for a Triumph. Connections might have a couple that have got a chance and they think, oh, maybe send one to a Supreme. Now, normally it's an £8 allowance they get. They're talking now about universally across Ireland and Britain to make it a £12 allowance for those 4-year-olds. So not that it makes literal sense in here, but I just wanted to mention that in a handicap of this nature, obviously the 4-year-olds will have their official rating, which isn't in the band of just those anymore. When they're running in these open handicaps, when I say open, it's a novice handicap, they're running against elder horses running off of their official ratings, whereas if it was a conditions race, so like a graded race, for example, they could be getting up to £12 off of some of these runners. So I would just start to factor that in a little bit now, because previously when it was the £8 thing, people should think about it. Same as when mares are running in handicaps, they're not getting their £7 allowance, are they? Like, they could still win the race. I'm not saying they can't, but maybe just think a bit more about that they're not talking about removing the allowance like they do for the mares. They're talking about adding more on. So enough said on there. Now we're going to get on to a grade 1 action. Appreciate it doesn't run in the Champion Novice Hurdle. Obviously won the Supreme, won it emphatically. Blue Lord would have come second had he not come down at the last. Paul Townend does choose to ride Blue Lord. Now, I think Appreciate it was very, very good at Cheltenham. Don't get me wrong, I knew he'd win the race. It was being a bit crabbed before the season, or before the festival came around, and I couldn't really see why in the fact that he'd beaten all of the horses that were there to beat. He's not here though, so when you take him out of the division, Ballyadam obviously was a bit lacklustre at Aintree, thought the step up in trip would suit him. Maybe he's just had a long, hard season. I think the likes of Blue Lord now is sort of next best of the rest. And again, like I touched on with Aintree, that they're probably more like grade 2s. That's what this race feels like now. This feels like a grade 2. And I think pre-Cheltenham, if anyone had said Blue Lord in a grade 2, you'd fancy the pants off of him. So he's clearly got a cracking chance. And the fact that Paul's on board makes me feel like he's probably the one to side with. However, he is short enough. Echoes in Rain was definitely very impressive at Fairy House. She does get the £7 mare's allowance. On official figures, that puts them to bang level anyway. She did beat Belfast Banner. He went and won a county and then won a cheap grade 1 at Aintree. But, I don't know. Of the two, I'd say that I fancy Blue Lord more. I can see where Paul Townend's riding him. Course and distance winner, but I wouldn't be confident in betting it, and they're both too short anyway, so leave it, it's a match. I don't really know how much we're going to learn for next season. I could see Blue Lord bolting up in this, and then doesn't really make him any more of a superstar than he was, but he does look a horse that's very progressive. So we'll see, but Echoes in Rain was good the last day, wasn't she? Then there's a handicap hurdle after this, which is a pretty decent handicap hurdle. We get this as the seasons go on anyway. There's lots of horses that we may have fancied in other races, horses that have got big names from previous years. There's loads in here that are probably disappointed as the season's gone through. Magic Tricks, Champagne Gold, Midnight Run was one that I thought was potentially going to be a nice little stayer. Cade Boy, I'd give a little bit of a squeak to at Cheltenham. Exit Pole and Polished Steel for Jesse Harrington are both aborted chases to come to this race. It is Polished Steel that I'm going to give a bit of a mention to, that I'm semi-interested to play. And my tactic for this would be to back him on the exchanges at a reasonable price. I think, I don't know, maybe hopefully try and get somewhere around 40s on him and then potentially trade him in running, because this is a nice travelling horse. When he won his chase debut, beating Armour Game Changer, I thought this could be graded quality horse. I think he peaked at 137 over fences, but you know, he has won course and distance. He won at this festival 2 years ago. Wasn't this particular race, it was the Stayers Hurdle day that he won his handicap, but you know, got that course form. £7 higher. Oh, excuse me. Live. Yeah, so £7 higher now than he was when he won that race, but I don't know. Sean O'Keefe's obviously on not Robbie Power, so Robbie Power ride an Exit Pole, another one that's aborted fences, so I don't know how strong a fancy it would be. And as I say, there's lots of horses in it that got bits of chances. But that's the way I'll probably be playing Polished Steel. I think I'm going to try and back him on exchanges at a big price, stick in a lay at maybe 20s or something like that, or even maybe even 30s just to get out quickly, and then I could have a free roll on a 10s, 20s poke that might have half a chance. William Hill Champion Chase, this is my only real bet for day one. I've backed Chacon Poursoir. I still do think he is the best 2 mile chaser in training. Cheltenham hasn't really scuppered that for me. I think for whatever reason it was, whether it was the travel, whether it was he didn't get up the hill, whether he didn't particularly like Cheltenham, whatever it was, that definitely wasn't the full Chacon Poursoir. Now, obviously he's been tricky to keep in training before, and the fact that he's had 4 spins this season maybe begs the question, like, can he handle lots of runs? So that's a slight mini little nagging down the back of my head, but not enough to make me think that he couldn't win this. Allaho was obviously very impressive at Cheltenham. If there was a 2.5 mile race at Punchestown, 100% that's where Allaho would be going. So when you think of it in that extent, if there was a champion chase, a Ryanair and a Gold Cup at this festival, Allaho wouldn't even be in this race. The sectional guy that Willie Mullins just got told him that Allaho was very, very fast. Obviously, Willie Mullins still hasn't won a champion chase. Why would you not want to find out what this horse could do over 2 miles than run him in here? And particularly, if you take Chacon Poursoir out the race, it's not that deep in behind. Now, I know Nube Negra's in there. First Flow won't really like the quicker ground. I wouldn't have thought Silas Emery wouldn't like the quicker ground. So, you know, Allaho's really only got one horse potentially to beat in here. Could get away with an undercooked performance or not his best performance and get away with it at 2 miles. And then they've got all the next season to plan what they're going to do with him after. So I guess earlier on in the season, they'll go 2 mile chasing again just to see if they can back it up. So I think all of that said, I mean, Allaho doesn't have to win this race, does he, to suggest that he could be a 2 miler. The way he's been trained this season would have been with longer targets in mind, I would have thought. Not that it should make too much of a difference, but I do think Chacon Poursoir's the one to beat. I think Chacon Poursoir will win this, and I'm quite happy to back him around about the 5 to 4 mark. I think he wins. I'm glad that Allaho's in here because it gives us a bit of a price on Chacon. And I know there'll be lots of people thinking the other way around. They'll be liking Allaho, but I don't know, you've got an Albert Bartlett runner-up, you've got an RSA runner-up, and you've got a horse that's won the best part of 2 mile 5 at Cheltenham, albeit in an emphatic flying start. This is a 2 mile race. He was fairly pants in his bumper over 2 miles where he just sort of led a little bit and then was maybe a little bit outsped towards the end. Now, obviously, he's a different horse now, but yeah, I'd be happy to take Allaho on in that, which I am doing. Then there's a couple of bumpers on the day as well. I won't go into some nice enough bred horses in there, so they'll just be clues for the future. Nothing that I've got a strong enough opinion that I'd want to back on day one anyway in those races. Then we've got the champion novice chase, Envoy versus Monkfish. Obviously it's a bit deeper than that. You've got Franco de Port that people were backing for an Arkle that's now on in 3 miles. Get your heads tested. Cool Reevy won the mare's chase at Cheltenham. I think this is going to be her last race. Maybe she's going to be covered, but yeah, great looking race on paper, the fact that we've got the Monkfish Envoy clash and we've got that couple of bit of deepness in behind to help. I don't know tactically what they're going to be doing. I feel like all of the horses for Willie Mullins should be running there on their own right. Tactically, I think personally that to get Monkfish beat, you probably want to be in front of him. So I'd expect Rachel to be handy with Envoy, but then I don't know. She's very astute as a tactical jockey, isn't she? Like what she did on Allaho versus Min at Cheltenham was impressive to say the least. But then Punchestown, I don't like. He wouldn't want to be getting or giving Envoy too much rope. So look, it'll be fascinating to see how they go. We saw how Envoy was in the prelims at Cheltenham. I say the prelims just before the start. He was circling about, like, didn't really look that relaxed. So it'll be very telling to see what he's doing just before the race kicks off. So like, I fancy Monkfish to win this race. Just because of Monkfish, I think, comes in here in like better form. He's answered a lot more questions up to now, and that little niggling doubt about Envoy at the moment, the unsettledness because of Cheltenham. We know he's travelled there before and he's been fine, and obviously he's coming in off the back of a fall, having not made any sort of mistake at all over his fences. So it's good to see what he'll do after, but I don't know. And at the start of the season as well, I was saying that Envoy should have been going for the 3 mile division. So you'd think now, the fact that it's the first time him stepping up into the trip, I would be maybe all over him or maybe fancying him a bit, but I don't know, I'm a bit reserved. And it's a race I don't really want to play in. Unless Envoy was messing about at the start, then I'd probably want to back Monkfish because I think it's a given. But if the real Envoy turns up, then I think it's a real clash. Monkfish needs to make sure he's got his better jumping boots on, but we know he can handle a mistake. Envoy's got to prove that he stays this far anyway. We know he did in his point, but like, I don't think stamina is going to be an issue with him. He's only going to be better for next season, so this really is more of a case of let's just let him run in here. Let's just see how well he can stay up into there. But yeah, it's going to be a stonking race. I would side with Monkfish if someone said to me I had to have a bet in the race, and I'd probably look to back Monkfish. I'll be watching what they're doing as they're down at the start to see if Envoy does look a little bit unsettled, and if he did, I'd want to back Monkfish just before the off. But they're both proper horses. We know that beforehand. It is a great clash to see. Yeah, I could probably talk about it over and over again for longer than this, but I would just be saying the same things over and over and over again. So yeah, hopefully Monkfish smashes it up. But I just think for next season, we've still got these potential clashes between the two of them. It doesn't necessarily mean that whoever wins this race is going to undoubtedly hold that 3 mile division full stop. Although I'd caveat that with if Envoy does him on Tuesday, then I don't really see a way back for Monkfish. It obviously depends in the manner that he does it, doesn't it? Then there's a couple of other races after this. Again, there's another bumper towards the end, but I won't go into it in any depth. I'll keep these fairly concise, so probably about now is time to wrap it up. I'll do this for every day. I'll be looking at a couple of smallish bets in the some of the handicaps. Again, probably looking to play a position more than anything. I might want to back something at a price that I know I can trade in running, or I think I can trade in running, just to get a little bit of an interest in. But I'm having some reasonable bets on some other stuff. So Chacon Poursois, the reasonable bet for day one. I really, really do fancy him. I think he wins. And then I'm still hoping that Allaho could be a King Georgie horse, but we'll see what he does here. And again, I still think they'll test him over shorter trips next season early on. This might not be the indefinite answer to what's happening with him. Unless obviously him and Chacon both run up to their full potential and he absolutely smacks him up, because then they'll have to think of him as a champion chaser. But I said I was going to wrap it up. I will wrap it up. Thank you guys for your support. It's live the first time, so I don't really know how to end this. But yeah, thank you very much. I'll be back for the rest of the week. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you guys fancy, and I will see. Harvey, I don't know for definite if he's going to run in there. Because he's not in the 2 mile race, I suggest that's where he's probably going to go. I think he wants further anyway, Appreciate. I think we all knew that at the start of the season. I would say that Willie will run him in the 2.5 miler because he thought of him as an Albert Bartlett horse at the start of the season. And if anything more for his sanity, he probably wants to confirm that he does want that bit further. So I think he will, but I wouldn't be backing him short-term anti-post now because it's almost suicide. Obviously, the 4-1 about him, I think he was last night, maybe still is, would look very juicy as a muggy each way bet, wouldn't it, in the race? But don't know for definitely to go there. He might just be out, or might be stopped for the rest of the season. But given his age and the fact that Willie wanted him to go further, surely you'd run him in this 2.5 miler to plan for fences next year. So I would say that he's going to run, but I wouldn't be backing him just yet. Anyway, peace out. Have a good day. See you later.